This seems like it's a bit at a crossroads right now for this Browns organization, and Kevin Stefanski and his leadership group, they've got to come up with some answers, and they got to come up here fast.
Francisco! What a play, so much pressure, and Elliott just gets his arm up and swats it away. Lenore with the scoop and score. What a play.
Welcome to the NFL on Fox podcast presented by Verizon, the NFL powered by Verizon 5G. I am your host, Dave Helman, and you know, that call right there from our guys, Kevin Burkhardt and Tom Brady, it perfectly encapsulates what was a wacky, wild, long Week 5 Sunday. Just like the San Francisco 49ers, that field goal gets blocked. Amador Lenore returns it for a touchdown. Feels like a very ho-hum, routine 49ers victory. Much like that game, which turned into an Arizona Cardinals upset. Week 5 started one way and ended in ways I could have never even imagined. At times, I could have never even imagined. We had London football in Week 5, so an early morning start, and Sunday of Week 5 didn't even wrap up until Monday. We had 1 a.m. Eastern time football, thanks to the Cowboys and Steelers. We will get into that one, but so much to get to, so many fun results, questionable coaching decisions, some impressive performances on defense and special teams. So much to get into, but as we alluded to, where better to start than perhaps the most surprising result of Week 5, and that was the one out in the Bay where the 49ers looked like they were cruising to a routine victory until the exact opposite thing happened. The Arizona Cardinals stunning their division rivals in a 24-23 upset. Even a banged-up San Francisco team felt like an easy bet to beat the Cardinals. It was the biggest spread of the weekend. Niners favored by 7.5 points. Even if they don't cover, you figure surely they'll get out of there with the win to improve to 3-2. Not so fast. Arizona goes up to Santa Clara. They take the Niners lunch money in a 24-23 upset. Their first win against San Francisco since 2021. Kyler Murray, the star of the day, should have known something was up on the second play of Arizona's afternoon. Kyler calls his own number on a 50-yard house call, celebrating at the 35-yard line, which is something he had a chance to talk to our own Tom Brady about, as he was Tom Brady's LFG Player of the Game.
Every game that I broadcast, I award the LFG Player of the Game to that one player who makes me say, let's go.
Kyler, congratulations. You won the LFG Player of the Game. What a performance by your team. Listen, the first thing I want to ask about was that you called your own number. In the first, that you pulled it on the zone read, and you had your finger up at the 45-yard line. Let me hear about that.
Yeah, no, I knew, it was kind of spur of the moment, man. I want to say it was Nick who bit on the zone read. I pulled it. I knew if Elijah could get that block, I was out of there and I was gone. So it was a good feeling to get out in the open, get out in space, and show some speed a little bit.
I think we tracked your miles per hour with some ridiculous speed, like over 21. When did you get that? You always been that fast? When you're in the open field, nobody's catching you?
Yeah, I mean, since I was 5 years old, it's been like that. So it was good, like I said, to get out and run.
Amazing, and what a signature win for the franchise. And obviously coming off last week's tough loss to Washington, where they played really well and you guys just weren't on your game. How's this one feel today, walking out of this stadium with a win?
Feels good, man. This one flushes last week. Obviously, we got a next week mindset to come in here against a divisional opponent and flush that game. Come in here and beat a great team, the 49ers. Man, it was a great way to bounce back, and I'm proud of the guys, man. It fought 60 minutes, man. It was a hell of a win,
Yeah, thanks a lot. Go in there with your teammates and celebrate. Keep being that great leader that you are, man. I'm really proud of you. Great seeing you live today in person. It was a great game by you and your teammates. Congrats.
I appreciate you, Tom.
Not sure if you're big college football fans out there listening, but it was a very wacky weekend in the college game. A lot of big upsets. Number 1 Alabama goes down against Vanderbilt. That sort of Saturday. Sunday felt like that too in this Cardinals 49ers game. Felt very college-y in the way that the Cardinals just kind of hung around and waited for the 49ers to make enough mistakes to capitalize on. Because I'll be honest, it felt very sleepy for a minute there. San Francisco, with 5 minutes to play in the first half, they go up 20-10 when they block a field goal. Diamador Lenore takes it back to go up by 2 scores. They're up 23-10 at halftime. And even with kicker Jake Moody getting injured, it feels like they've got everything they need. At no real point did it feel like they were in danger until they were. And that's what happens when you turn the ball over on 3 of your final 4 possessions. Brock Purdy, 2 interceptions in this game. And the real killer for me, Jordan Mason, who's been so phenomenal in Christian McCaffrey's place this season, fumbles on the Arizona 8-yard line with 6 minutes to play. 49ers go in for a touchdown there. They're up by 2 scores with not a lot of ball game left. And maybe this is a sloppy win by San Francisco, but a win all the same. Obviously, that's not what happened. The Arizona Cardinals get that fumble. They drive the field and they put it on the new guy. It always happens this way. Chad Ryland is their new kicker as of this week. Matt Prater dealing with a knee injury. They activate Ryland from the practice squad. Drafted last year by New England. What a forgettable rookie year. 16 of 25 for the Pats last year. Worst percentage in the NFL. Does not matter. Ryland drills the go-ahead field goal with 1:37 to play. 3 of 4 on the day, and the miss was a block, not an outright miss, just a special teams blocking breakdown. Huge day for Chad Ryland, rising to the occasion. I bet it was a day the Niners wish they had him. They lose Jake Moody on a field goal, or on a kickoff, and field goals just go out the door for them from that point on. San Francisco had a turnover on downs from the Arizona 27-yard line because kicking at that point in the game, just not an option. Tough break for them, but so many more opportunities to win this game, and they just didn't grab it. Stat of the day for you to know, the Kyle Shanahan 49ers were 38-0 when leading by 10 or more heading into the fourth quarter of a game. They are now 38-1. Kyler and the Cardinals engineering maybe not a miraculous comeback, but one that I just didn't see coming until we were right on the doorstep of it. Big, big day for the Arizona Cardinals. And I think it's fair to wonder about the 49ers. So many injuries, so many things they have to overcome. And I'm not going to put too much on Brock Purdy. He's been phenomenal for the better part of this season. But this is what it looks like when you're shorthanded, when you're dealing with this many different obstacles to overcome. It's a long season, but when do the 49ers get back to humming at full strength? And will they have lost enough games that they regret it by then? I mean, you're already, even at 2-3, barring some sort of incredibly impressive run, which I guess we can't rule that out completely, right? This is the San Francisco 49ers, but you're already looking at a world where the bye week is in trouble. Seeding is something that you're worried about. Much harder fight for the 49ers than I think a lot of people expected. And short week coming up. They go to Seattle for Thursday Night Football next, and then it's Kansas City. It's going to take some real grit and determination to get out of this thing, as the Niners have now lost 3 out of their last 4. A shocking result that I just did not see coming when Sunday started. Up next, our second item on the Sunday Six is the dream that is not dying in the District of Columbia. The Washington Commanders crushed the Cleveland Browns 34-13. I mean, they were favored in this game. Not saying it's crazy that they won, but an absolute drubbing by a Commanders team that is now 4-1 for just the first time since 2008. Had a chance to catch up with our guys, Jason Benetti and Greg Olsen, about another impressive Washington win.
All right, so every week people are waiting for Washington to not win again, right? For the mirage to stop. I don't think it's a mirage anymore.
No, I mean, you're like you said, you're waiting on them to come back down to earth, and right now they're riding a hot young rookie quarterback who's playing as well as any quarterback in the league, rookie or not. They've got great play callers. They've got great leadership with Dan Quinn. This thing's starting to resemble a real potential team here. And we talked a lot during the game. That matchup next week against the Ravens, I feel bad saying it because every week we say, we're going to learn a lot about these Commanders. They just continue to perform and perform. That's matchup, I don't know before the season if anyone had that one circled, but right now, that's one of the better games next week.
Yeah, they win 34-13 today against Cleveland. Where does Cleveland go from here?
They've got a lot of tough decisions to make right now. They've got to figure out, they got to go back and have very honest conversations amongst the coaches, amongst the players, the leadership of this team, and they need to say, okay, guys, what we're doing is not working. It's broken. There is no positive that we can hang our hat on as an entire football club here, and there's going to be some guys that have to face the music. There's going to be some guys that's performances and attitudes and body language and preparation. All of those things are on the table, so this seems like it's a bit at a crossroads right now for this Browns organization, and Kevin Stefanski and his leadership group, they've got to come up with some answers, and they got to come up here fast.
They fall 34-13 Washington over Cleveland today.
Ironically, this was probably Jayden Daniels' worst performance of this incredible rookie season. He completed just 56% of his passes, committed a red zone turnover. I hear you, Washington fans. I don't think that was actually an interception by Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah on the goal line, but wasn't reviewed, officially stands as a red zone turnover for Jayden Daniels. Even if this was technically his quote-unquote worst performance, that speaks to how incredible this guy has been through the first 5 weeks of his rookie season than anything. 320 all-purpose yards on the day, gorgeous deep ball touchdown to De'Ami Brown. More importantly, and again, we knew the efficiency wouldn't be otherworldly forever. Obviously, the Commanders would have to punt. They'd have to settle for field goals eventually. But even still, on a day where the Browns made life a little more difficult than what we've seen the last 2 weeks, Jayden Daniels led the Commanders to points on 6 of 10 possessions before the Commanders pulled him with 12 minutes left to play in the game. That's just not supposed to happen in the NFL. Speaks to the level of dominance we saw in this game. Had a chance to catch up with Jayden himself about this incredible start.
Jayden, I walked by a fan who said, we got us a football team. A lot of hope here in this area. Tell me what it means to you.
It means a lot to go out there and compete every Sunday, be able to battle through adversity. I mean, we didn't play the cleanest game as an offense, but we still got room to grow, but I love how we finished.
Over 30 points in this one, too. Tell me what the next gear looks like if we're doing this already.
Got to go back and watch the film. Like I said, we didn't play the cleanest game, but all glory to God for getting us the win, allowing us to go out there and persevere.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Jayden Daniels, the first player in NFL history with 1,000 passing yards and 250 rushing yards in his first 5 NFL games. An incredible start. I love what Greg Olsen said. I mean, I don't think I need to learn anything else about the Washington Commanders. I think this is very real, but man, what a matchup. Washington, Baltimore, just 45 minutes apart, give or take, facing off next Sunday. Already one of the big ones I'm circling for week 6. Jayden against Lamar. Can't wait. Quick note on the other side of this. We didn't mention the Cleveland Browns. Greg Olsen talked about it. I mean, it is shaping up, if it wasn't already, to be a very uncomfortable week for the Cleveland Browns. Just an abysmal performance, and I'm going to put it completely on the Cleveland offense. Honestly, you look at it, I know they scored 34 points. I know they were very efficient. I thought the Cleveland Browns defense did a good enough job to at least be in this game. They turned the ball over in the red zone. They forced the Commanders to settle for field goals and punts. This Cleveland offense is a problem. Deshaun Watson, 125 passing yards on the day, sacked 7 more times. Yards per attempt, 4.5. Down there with the absolute worst of the week, ironically, keeping company with Josh Allen and Aaron Rodgers, but those guys having much more consistent success than Deshaun Watson to this point in the season. Kevin Stefanski already said after this game, they're not changing quarterbacks. I get it. The guy is guaranteed $230 million. I suppose you have to find a way to make it work or else admit that you made the worst trade in NFL history. But man, I worry about the vibes of this Cleveland team. 3 losses in a row, the 1 win on the season against Jacksonville, a very, very ugly one where they only scored 18 points. They still have not scored 20 points in a game as we head in to week 6 of the NFL season. It feels very, very bad. If the Browns don't want to make a change at quarterback, that's their prerogative. But at some point, I think you run the risk of losing the locker room if you can't more consistently score points. Feels really dicey in Cleveland. I'm interested to see where this goes, particularly if the Browns are committed to Deshaun Watson the way they say they are. Let's get to the third item on the Sunday Six. And when we sat down and planned the show out on Sunday morning, we just decided to leave a little blank space for the last game of the day, Cowboys Steelers. Just leave a spot in the show. Something's bound to happen, right? And boy, am I glad we did. What a game in Pittsburgh on Sunday night. It's our Victory Unlocked. It's brought to you by Zillow. Agents, tours, loans, homes. Mike McCarthy had to feel right at home in his hometown of Pittsburgh. I don't know that he was prepared for what followed. I don't know where to start. Cowboys outlast the Steelers in probably the strangest game of the 2024 season so far. They hang on for a 20-17 win. Game that got weird from the very beginning. Delayed 90 minutes by bad weather. Just monsoons in Western PA. Hour and a half delay. I think it was a 9:45 p.m. start time Eastern. Never been so happy that we're out here on the West Coast. Game ended after 1 a.m. Eastern time, midnight in the DFW area. And just where to start? The most Tony Romo-esque performance I've ever seen from Dak Prescott. And I've compared the two a lot in recent years. I think their careers are kind of taking on this eerily similar trajectory. Very, very good quarterbacks, occasionally top of the league type quarterbacks who just can't ever seem to get it done in the playoffs, in the big moments. This was the eeriest similarity of all because Dak Prescott was simultaneously the reason the Cowboys win this game to improve to 3-2, staving off disaster, and also the biggest reason why it was even one of the most dramatic games of the year. Dak Prescott, 352 yards, throws the game-winning touchdown to Jayden Tolbert with 20 seconds to play on 4th down, mind you, pulls it out of the fire with a last gasp drive in the final 4 minutes, but also a night where his mistakes, particularly in the red zone, gave the Steelers life. First half, Cowboys moving the ball well. They've already got a field goal on the night. Dak allows himself to be stripped by TJ Watt and Nick Herbig. 3rd down, where he had all the time in the world to at least get rid of the ball, even if there was nobody open, doesn't do it. Strip sack, no points on a red zone trip. Half hour later, throws one of the ugliest interceptions I can remember in recent years from him to Dante Jackson in the Pittsburgh end zone, looking for CD Lamb. Dak and CD not being able to get on the same page, feeling like a theme in this early season. And then in the 4th quarter, not a red zone turnover, but in the middle of the field, throws a badly overthrown ball and Steelers corner Joey Porter Jr. comes down with it. 3 turnovers on the night. And that final pick enabled Justin Fields to drive the Steelers down for a go-ahead touchdown with just 4 minutes to play. Very, very easy to say Dak Prescott is the main culprit in the Cowboys' problems. I mean, stop me if you've heard this before. They also had 11 penalties on the night, had a blocked field goal, special teams, penalties, miscues. There's other stuff, but Dak's decision-making, a big, big part of it. And then he delivered them. 5 of 7 for 48 yards and the touchdown on that last drive. Did get a big assist from Rico Dowdle, who had his best game as a Cowboy, except before Dak could even fire the game winner to Jayden Tolbert, he has to dive on a Rico Dowdle fumble at the goal line. Landon Roberts, by the way, Pittsburgh DB, a wonderful Troy Polamalu impression, my guy, just smacking Rico Dowdle at the goal line with everything on the line in this game. Dak falls on the ball. They live to see another down. 4th down, 20 seconds to play. Finds Jayden Tolbert, who had gotten hurt a snap prior, by the way. So Tolbert playing gimpy. Dak finds him at the pylon. Touchdown, 20-17. Big night for Jalen Tolbert. Brandon Cooks went on IR earlier this week. They needed the young guy to step up. Step up, he does. He leads all receivers in this game. 7 catches, 87 yards, and the game winner. Just a wild game. And such a fun ending does not offset how overall bad of a football game this was. Steelers offense could not get much going against the Cowboys. They averaged just 4 yards a play. Justin Fields did manage 2 touchdown drives in the second half, but Mike Tomlin even said it in the in-game interview. They were beating their own butt and weren't even worried about the Cowboys because the Steelers couldn't get out of their own way. A very sloppy, rain-delayed game that, I don't blame you if you're catching up on this on Monday morning because you didn't want to stay up for it. But man, oh man, did the last 4 minutes deliver. Dak Prescott, that's why you paid him $60 million a year, is to pull you out of the fire, keep the Cowboys above 500, keep them alive in the NFC East race. You'd also prefer he not make it that difficult by committing 3 turnovers. The duality of man, the duality of Dak, if you will. Cowboys gonna cowboy. It's always going to be entertaining. Maybe not as good of a football game as the classic that they played in 2016, way back in Dak's rookie year. They go toe for toe with Ben and Antonio Brown 8 years ago. Not even on the same planet in terms of quality of football, but every bit as memorable a finish. I'm going to go ahead and call it one of the most memorable games of Dak's 8+ year career. And Mike McCarthy gets a hell of a homecoming in Pittsburgh. I'll be processing that one for quite some time. Cowboys going to cowboy indeed. All right, the fourth item on our Sunday 6 is a pair of walk-offs in the early window. 2 of the best games of Week 5. The Bills and the Texans come down to the wire in regulation, and the Bengals and Ravens goes to overtime, so naturally comes down to the final play. 2 thrilling games, and to get through it all, two games that I'm still perplexed and I'll even say angry about several hours after the fact. And to go through it all, we've got our guy, Henry McKenna of FoxSports.com, had a close eye on both of these games. Henry, like I said, I'm still processing some things that happen in these games, but let's start with the Houston Texans squeaking past the Buffalo Bills. Last play of regulation, Kaimi Fairbairn drills a long kick at the buzzer to win this game 23-20. Texans at 4-1. Bills have now lost 2 straight. But let's not bury the lead, man, because I want to talk to you specifically about what the Bills did backed up on their own goal line with 30 seconds to play. Looks for all the world that this game's headed to overtime as well. And the Bills opt to chuck 3 passes, burn 11 seconds of clock, and open the door for the Texans to win this game in regulation, which they do. Can you help me make sense of this very strange, overly aggressive, whatever you want to call it, decision-making by Sean McDermott, offensive coordinator Joe Brady, and the Buffalo Bills? Do you have anything for me?
I mean, if I was to defend them, I would say let's talk about putting the ball in Josh Allen's hands. Let's give him, ample time and work with the ball. And on the flip side, the Texans have 3 timeouts. So if you really want to try and drain the clock, you're going to have issues because they're going to still stop you, right? So even if they, in the after the first down, for example, they said, you know what, we didn't get our first down on our first down attempt. Let's start running the ball. Let's start running the clock. Texans are going to start calling timeouts, right? So in that circumstance, you might as well entrust Josh Allen with the ball, give him 3 shots to get a first down. That way, when they start attempting to stop the clock, you're sort of like ahead of schedule rather than trying to just burn timeouts, which ultimately they didn't that badly need because the punt was so bad. But maybe they would have had a little more space to punt if they'd run the ball. Maybe they would have had more space to throw, frankly, if they'd run the ball. The truth is that given Sean McDermott's history of mismanaging late game situations, we even saw him have trouble with a challenge earlier in the game. It was a crucial 3rd down in the second quarter, kind of leading into halftime, and the Bills were trailing, and Dalton Kincaid probably did come down with a sideline grab, but the officials called it out of bounds, and it was worth challenging at the very least. Maybe was hard to turn over, but worth at least getting officials to take a second look. And we see Sean McDermott pretty consistently struggle with challenges. When he actually throws the flag, he's not very effective. And then he seems to miss opportunities like this pretty regularly. So when you put it all into a sort of like bigger picture, you start, there's the argument, the defense that I made sort of just a minute ago, but when you put it against, Sean McDermott's greater history of having, it's sort of his blind spot. Like he's one of the best personnel maximizers in the NFL, especially on defense. That's what he does better than anyone else. We saw, as usual, that Bills defense step up in the second half. But for all of that sort of impressive work that he does as a coach, getting the most out of players, he is not there. And I was going to say yet, right? But he's an extremely experienced head coach. So there's great question as to whether he'll ever really get there. I don't know why they don't have someone doing the job for him at this point. Someone needs to be kind of in his ear, talking analytics, talking about what is sort of the most shrewd way to manage these late game situations, because he's not getting it done. And with Josh Allen, they should have a Super Bowl appearance at this point. And I think we could talk in the playoffs if they get bounced again. Like, we got to look at this crucial 2-minute drill, 2-minute situation, 1-minute situation, because their nemesis is Patrick Mahomes, and he's better than anyone at getting points with 30 seconds left.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that McDermott. I mean, McDermott is what he is at this point. He's been the head coach of the Bills since 2017. I think that's more than enough time on task. I think you make the good point that the Texans had all of their timeouts. Maybe the Bills wind up in that situation regardless, but to only drain 10, 11 seconds when, one good running play can get you to overtime, it's going to not sit well with me for quite some time. Also, a very troubling, for a variety of reasons, performance from the Bills offense. I mean, Josh Allen, 9 of 30. That is an Anthony Richardson-esque stat line by the Bills quarterback. Did have 54 rushing yards, which was nice. On top of the Bills offense looking inconsistent, you also have to factor in Josh Allen seemed to take a pretty big knock on the head in this game. It was honestly kind of shocking that he finished the game, in my opinion, just based on what we saw at the end of that game. Where do you think the Bills offense goes from here? I mean, when it's clicking, and it has been at times this season, it's been very impressive, but clearly the last 2 weeks, some talented defenses has been able to get some very rough results out of these guys.
Yeah, the elephant in the room was just on the opposing sideline. He wasn't hard to see, right? It was Stephon Diggs. That's the guy that they thought they had replaced with sort of this pass catcher by committee in the early weeks. But over the last, 6 quarters or 2 games, we've really seen the Buffalo Bills struggle to get production out of those guys. And I'll add, Khalil Shakir was not playing. He wasn't up for this game. And he is like probably, I think we saw one of the more underrated players. I mean, I want to say in the whole AFC, I mean, the whole league, basically, because he is sort of like what was Julian Edelman for the Patriots. Shakir is a slot receiver that can do a little bit more than that, but also just kind of like gets the engine going for a guy like Josh Allen, who struggles really to like, he's like a puppy. Amina Kimes once said this. He's like a puppy. He just gets zoomies, and he just wants to throw the ball downfield. He wants to chuck it. He wants the big play. And it's like, hey there, little guy. Like, take it easy. The check down's always there.
One play at a time, bud. You don't have to get to the end zone in one snap.
Doggy. And when Khalil Shakir is there, he is open, and he is the guy that Allen looks at. But when he's out of the lineup, we saw, right? Allen started, I think, like 1 of 9, which he tied his worst 1 of 8. So 1 of 9, I think by deduction, must have been his worst start ever in a single game. Now, I think it says something about Josh Allen that he almost won this game, given that statistic. But I also think like we just need to see this Bills offense bring a little bit more coherence without Stephon Diggs. There was a Red Sox team a few years ago that had this T-shirt that said "He's the Ace," and it was a preseason thing, spring training thing. And as the season, went on, it was like this cute idea, right? That there's no number one pitcher in Boston. It was just that they have 5 guys that were all the ace. But the truth was that none of them were aces, and they would have known that they had an ace if one of them was good enough to be an ace, right? The Bills' offense is that situation. They started the season being like, he's the ace, meaning like, Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman, Dalton Kincaid, Matt Collins, Curtis Samuel, right? This group of like deep pass catchers that can all get it done, except we saw this week and the week before that maybe they can't all get it done. Maybe this rotation kind of like they're waiting for him to be the ace. And so we've got problems ever since Stephon Diggs changed teams.
Yeah, maybe they don't need one superstar player, but at the very least, they need a volume guy that Josh Allen can find time and time again. I thought it was going to be Dalton Kincaid. It has not been through 5 weeks of the season. Maybe to your point, it can get back on track when Khalil Shakir is healthy. But yeah, they just don't seem to have that guy that Josh Allen can find third down after third down or in big spots. Just hasn't been there. Texans, I think it worth watching that Nico Collins left this game with a hamstring injury. The run game still not clicking the way that they would prefer, I'm sure. But I will say, you look at this stretch, it hasn't been their best ball. 4-1 with your only loss being to one of the league's only undefeated teams. I think you'll take that 10 times out of 10.
Yeah, like you said, Nico Collins leaves in the first quarter, actually, with a hamstring injury on his long touchdown. You know what? The Texans didn't score another touchdown following his departure from the lineup. CJ Stroud suddenly looks a whole lot more sloppy. Their offense halts, near the red zone or before it even. We saw a different offense after Nico Collins left the game. And I think that there should be significant concern. I like Stephon Diggs, and just explained why I think his absence is significant in the Bills offense. But I also think what's way more significant in the Houston offense is Nico Collins. The guy, had he not injured his hamstring, it's easy to imagine he would have had his 4th 100-yard game in 5-game span. The guy is, I think quietly, because I don't know if enough people are talking about it, he's quietly become one of the best receivers in the league. And so, that departure was pretty substantial. And you could see it, in the X's and O's, in the production from Stroud and his comfortability, not just in the red zone, but just sort of everywhere. That whole offense stopped churning out yards. And it became this like very big grind, I would say. So yeah, I don't know. Go ahead.
No, we've talked about it a few times on this show. We are making it the mission of the NFL on Fox podcast to be talking about Nico Collins as a top 3, top 5 type of receiver in the league. And yeah, I think you make a good point. This offense's struggles after he left this game, I think it's worth watching. And unfortunately, we're hoping the best, but unfortunately, hamstring injuries for receivers with deep speed, not always a great thing. So we'll see how that goes for the Texans, but they do get the win. Henry, I need to pick your brain on this other game, though. And I think this one is even more frustrating for me. Up in Cincinnati, the Ravens and the Bengals combined for almost 1,000 yards of offense, 79 points, the most frantic game of the day. And for opposite reasons, I felt like coaching cost the Bengals in this game because Lamar Jackson gift wraps this thing to the Bengals in the extra period. Halfway through overtime, he fumbles. He's looking downfield at the coverage before he's secured the snap. Cincinnati recovers at the Cincinnati 39-yard line. The Bengals recover this fumble basically in field goal range. And Bengals head coach Zach Taylor must agree with me because the Bengals made zero effort to get any closer. I know that the snap was botched on the missed 53-yard field goal by Evan McPherson, but I'm so frustrated by Cincinnati's seeming indifference toward getting closer for a more manageable field goal. And wouldn't you know it, it bites them. McPherson misses. The Bengals get the ball back, and 2-3 snaps later, Justin Tucker's drilling the game-winning field goal. What was the deal with that sequence?
Yeah. Well, first of all, we got to start. I mean, we've already been talking about Zach Taylor being on the hot seat, but now it's getting bad for him, in my opinion. As for the management of the kicker, I actually remember talking to Graham Gano, who's now retired, but he played for the Patriots. And when he was playing for them, they very carefully monitored his percentages at different yardage points. So they knew exactly how sure of a thing it would be for him from, every single yard. And they did that by basically creating like an analytics spreadsheet of their own so that they could be in constant communication with Graham about like, okay, this is where we kind of like need you to be for a game-winning kick, or this is where we think that you're going to basically hit it 99% of the time, and we're going to do everything we can to get you into that situation, especially in end of game. And that's how the Patriots would, and under Belichick, would manage games at the end. It's why, like, in part, Adam Vinatieri was such a successful clutch kicker, because they never put him out of range at those crucial moments. So he was never like super uncomfortable. I think we got to look at that situation and that knowledge of how good coaches manage kickers at ends of games and see, okay, well, McPherson missed from range. Could we have made him more comfortable? Did they make that decision based on a sort of like data point, or were they just saying, we're kind of close enough and we're just going to go and let's just like, let's not risk it trying to get more yards. And then
I'll give Zach Taylor I'll do him the favor of pointing out, yes, Evan McPherson has hit a lot of big kicks from a lot of long distances in his career. But when Joe Burrow is 30 of 39 for 392, I mean, Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins were doing damn near whatever they wanted against Baltimore, particularly in the second half of this game. And I saw afterward, Zach Taylor did say that Joe audibled out of a pass into a run, but 3 straight runs into the A gap of the Baltimore defense. It just felt so uninspired. Like, even if Evan McPherson can do it, asking him to connect from 50 plus when you could at least try to make it a 44, 45 yard field goal, it's going to stick in my craw for a long time. That's all I can say.
No, I mean, I'm with you. Like you said, when Jamar Chase is going for almost 200 yards and you've got T. Higgins with 2 touchdowns, I think at least, right? I mean, let me quickly look. Each of them had 2 touchdowns, right? So like you said, a offense that had the passing game at their own will, at their own pleasure, for them to not go to the passing game at any point, right? We actually, sort of the irony is, we were looking at the Bills, all they did was pass. We were looking at the Bengals, all they did was run. What about a little balance, guys? What about trying a little bit of, maybe we just do one or two of the other, right? So,
if only. Yeah, I mean, the Bengals box score is so much fun to look at. 5 passing touchdowns for Joe Burrow, but come up short in overtime. And you could even argue maybe the Bengals should have tried harder at the end of regulation to win the game in regulation. They did have the ball with an opportunity. Regardless, Baltimore now with 3 consecutive wins, and I don't want to let this detract either. Lamar Jackson, even with the fumble in overtime, absolutely bonkers. The touchdown he had late in this game where he zipped around in the backfield for what felt like 45 seconds before he eventually found, I think it was Rashad Bateman, or no, excuse me, Isaiah Likely. Absolutely phenomenal day from him. I thought it was a picture perfect example of what Lamar Jackson is capable of.
Yeah. Well, there was the moment when he fumbled it, and I was like, gosh, Lamar cannot catch a break. And also it was his own doing, so you can't just be like, write it off to bad luck. Because obviously the narrative with him is that, he can't win big games, which isn't true. But like in this situation, for him to flub that snap and for it to almost lead to the defeat, I think it would have just created a lot of false, like bad faith narratives. But thankfully, I think ball didn't lie in this situation, sort of weirdly, which is like rarely happens in football. But I loved seeing basically Derrick Henry save the game for the Ravens because it helped me get on my pulpit and be like, can we pay running backs for once? Can we just, like, 31 other teams could have paid that guy. He can run faster than we saw last week, right? He can run faster than an entire secondary, but he's built like a bison, like he's built like an absolute brick house. Like, that guy changes the game. I don't care that he's not Christian McCaffrey and that he can't catch the ball on third downs like all these dynamic running backs can do. The guy can flat out run. He's going to outrun the secondary. He's going to beat up linebackers, and he's going to get you a 51-yard game closing run that puts you in, scoring position. Game over, right? Like Derrick Henry didn't exactly, you look at the EPA per play, for example, and you see the advanced statistics show that Lamar, obviously with like his absurd statistics, gaudy numbers, really he won the game for them. But I just want to make sure that everybody respects Derrick Henry, that people pay running backs for what they deserve, because this year especially, quarterbacks are heating up, but the running game has really helped quarterbacks get through this like 4 or 5 week tough patch. And so I got to give Derrick Henry some love.
No, absolutely. And the irony is I got up here for the preview show and talked about how the Bengals had no prayer of slowing down the Baltimore run game. They honestly kept a pretty good lid on it right up until Derrick Henry sealed this thing in overtime with the 51-yard run that you mentioned. And hey, so Derrick Henry, one way or another, has now had a very direct impact on all 3 of these Ravens wins in a row. They're feeling good. Bengals, good news is it's only been 4 years since a 1-4 team made the playoffs. The 2020 Washington Commanders did pull it off. But the 2020 NFC East was a much worse division than this AFC North. So not saying it's over for the Bengals, but man, it really doesn't look good. We'll see where it goes from here. But Henry, I appreciate your time, man.
Thanks for having me. Good to see you.
5th item on our Sunday 6, Sinners on the most impressive division in the league so far this year. We don't have a king in the North yet, but the NFC North is looking like the king among divisions. They go 3-0 on the day, starting in the early window, and the NFC North, through 5 weeks of football, the only division where all 4 teams are above 500. It's really been impressive. And who's been more impressive than those Minnesota Vikings? If you didn't wake up early, they held on to win. They improved to 5-0 with a win against the New York Jets. And crazy enough, not the most impressive performance from the Vikings. I would call this their worst game of the season. And somehow I find that more impressive than some of these other games where everything seemed to go their way. Minnesota races out to a 17-0 lead. That is very much buoyed by a pick 6 from Andrew Van Ginkel. We will get to that in a minute. And then they just kind of hold on off the strength of Brian Flores' defense, which continues to be the story. Yes, Sam Darnold deserves all the credit in the world, but we saw what worked for the Vikings when Darnold and co weren't working. This was the first game of the year where Sam Darnold did not look so hot. Actually, not just his first game without a passer rating of 100 or more, half of that, a 50 passer rating. He really struggled with this Jets defense. If you're watching, you see the screen, just 14 of 31, threw a costly interception, but the Vikings defense negated that. They made life miserable on Aaron Rodgers, who I hope the guy got a chance to lie down on the flight back from overseas. Sacked 3 times, hit him another 11 times. Most importantly, picked him off 3 times. Van Ginkel gets the touchdown. And then at the very end of the game, after all of this, after a game that was largely dominated by the Vikings, Jets are driving to potentially steal this game. Stephon Gilmore, who signed late in the summer, the veteran, the former NFL Defensive Player of the Year, can still play some quality football. He gets the 3rd and final pick to seal this thing off. The Vikings head into their bye week at a perfect 5-0. Depending on what happens tonight with the Chiefs, they might be the only unbeaten team left in the league. We'll see what Kansas City does on Monday Night Football. But I found it incredibly impressive the way the Vikings did not play their game, at least not up to the standard that we've seen through the first month, still managed to get a win, and no less against a quarterback that, sure, he wore a different uniform, but Aaron Rodgers has tormented Minnesota fans for a long time. I bet that felt good to seal a win against a quarterback that has caused them so much angst over the years. Congrats to the Vikings. They head off into their bye week. some well-deserved R&R with a 5-0 record. You want to talk about impressive? The early slate showed us the most impressive performance we've seen so far from the Chicago Bears. I don't want to say we're prophets here at the NFL on Fox podcast, but very fitting that just a week ago we talked about how the Bears offense hasn't always been pretty, but the signs of improvement, the flashes are there. Eventually, you figure they put it all together. Don't know that I saw it coming as quickly as week 5, but here it is nonetheless. The Bears roll over the Carolina Panthers 36-10. And yeah, look, I know Carolina might not be the stiffest competition in the NFL, but spare me the eye rolls at putting away the Panthers, because since Andy Dalton took over for Bryce Young, that hasn't been something other teams could do. This team beat Las Vegas in impressive fashion. They obviously made life difficult on Cincinnati. At the very least, this has been a viable NFL team for the last 2 weeks, and the Bears just took them to the woodshed. And that was largely fueled by easily the most complete performance of Caleb Williams' young career. 126 passer rating, third best in the league so far through week 5. Guy goes 20 of 29 for 304 and 2 tutties. He is the first Bears rookie quarterback in history to hit 300 and throw for 2 touchdowns with no interceptions. We've seen the flashes. He really put it all together. Most importantly for me, last week on the show, we talked with Carmen Vitale about how the chunk plays, the explosive plays just weren't happening on a consistent enough basis. In this game against Carolina, Caleb Williams had 6 completions of 20 or more yards. That matches his total from the previous 4 games combined. Some of those were easy layups. He had a wonderful little dump off screen to DeAndre Swift that went for big yardage. But if you watched it, you know, his 30-yard touchdown to DJ Moore, just whoop, right in a window. Best throw of his career, easily. A phenomenal day for Caleb Williams. So it's no surprise he caught up with our own Megan Levy afterwards.
Caleb, congratulations on an epic performance, over 300 yards, 2 touchdowns. You got a lot of praise from your coaches and your teammates about how you're continuing to put it together each week. What was the difference maker today?
Yeah, I think the constant mindset of just keep growing, keep going. I've said many times the NFL is hard to win in. It's hard to be, a good player, a great player. And so, to be able to keep going, even though obviously I've had games where I didn't like, games that, I would say that are uncharacteristic, to keep going, the moments that I've had, and the guys that are around me, they've been special for me. Their encouragement, my teammates and all their encouragement, my teammates and how they play defense, offense, special teams, when the offense isn't going and things like that. And then today, all of us just kind of putting it together. It's hard to win games in the NFL, and, we did a good job today.
A lot of different offensive weapons today that were able to help this team be successful. The defense also played well. It was a lot of complimentary football. And Coach said the goal was to get a fast start. You guys were able to do that. How do you keep this momentum going?
Yeah, obviously you have this moment. You enjoy the win. But there's a lot that we need to build off. We had a few penalties late in the game that could possibly give that team momentum. There's different things that we've been correcting, throughout the weeks. But obviously we have a lot of work to go. But obviously, like I said, to get a win like this, and that margin of scoring, it's not an offensive thing, it's not a defensive thing, it's not a special teams thing. It's all of us, playing well together, like you said.
Absolutely. Well, congratulations on this one. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks.
That performance is bound to have Chicagoland buzzing for the foreseeable future, much more quietly. I mean, we'll say much less impressively. Their hated rivals to the north, the Green Bay Packers, kept pace. They also improved to 3-2 by hanging on out here in LA. They sneak out of town out here with a 24-19 win against the Rams. Don't think anybody's going to be buzzing about this one. Not particularly impressive, especially on Jordan Love's part. Offense very up and down. And Jordan, the pick 6. I know you're trying to make something happen, avoid a potential safety. Jordan Love's pick 6 in this game that kind of let the Rams back into it. Not one that he'll want to remember. But a couple things in this game were very impressive to me on a similar line of thinking of what we talked about with the Vikings. Mainly, the Packers managed to hold on for a clutch win. Fourth quarter leads were a problem for this team last year. Surprise, surprise. Youngest team in the NFL struggles with holding on to late leads. They lost 3 of their 8 games after holding a lead in the fourth quarter. So for starters, I think it matters that Green Bay was able to hold off Matthew Stafford and the Rams. Rams had the ball with a chance to win with a minute to play. Packers made the necessary plays. Rookie safety Evan Williams breaks up a 4th down pass, gets him off the field. Not saying it's particularly memorable or something that other teams can't do, but the Packers couldn't do it last year. I think that matters. And then even tighter on the Green Bay defense, Xavier McKinney turning into the early signing of the year so far. They signed him in the offseason to be a difference maker. New defensive coordinator, Jeff Hafley, needed a ball-hawking center fielder, free safety. Safe to say they've got him. I mean, we knew Xavier McKinney was a good player. He signed a contract worth roughly $70 million. But 5 picks in 5 games, that is a return on investment that you don't usually see so quickly. Like 5 picks for a safety in his first season, in any season really, is a fantastic effort. Xavier McKinney sitting on 5 in his first 5 games as a Packer. He is the first player since the AFL-NFL merger to do that. 5 picks in his first 5 games with a team. Incredibly impressive stuff. Gives you confidence that this Packers defense has staying power. I do think Jordan Love will rein in his wilder tendencies as the season goes. But for the defense to step up, it feels like a building block to me. And you look at it, the Lions obviously off this week. They'll be back in week 6. We thought this was one of the deepest divisions in football heading into the season. And so far, it might be the only one that's living up to that reputation. The NFC North, all 4 teams above 500, all 4 teams looking like potential playoff contenders, and they all get to play each other a bunch in the second half of the season, looking like it'll be must-see TV as the weather gets colder, which is just how you like it in the NFC North. Last, certainly not least, our 6th item on the Sunday 6. We're going to give a little love to the defense and the special teams in week 5. A crazy day on that side of the ball, and it clicked for me sometime in the late afternoon window. Got my laptop, taking my notes, trying to keep up with all the action. It's wild enough to see in the Seahawks-Giants game, you get a 102-yard scoop and score from Rayshon Jenkins. That'll register for you. Hit my brain that it's kind of weird 2, 4, 6 minutes later when Denver cornerback Patrick Surtain houses an interception from 100 yards out to tie the game against the Raiders. It's the first time in NFL history that we have seen 2 100-yard defensive touchdowns in the same week, let alone within 10 minutes of each other. It's just that kind of day, because at the end of it all, and technically still with 1 game to play, we've had 6 defensive or special teams touchdowns so far, 3 pick sixes on the day. Patrick Surtain, Jordan Love's ill-fated attempt here in LA, as well as Andrew Van Ginkel's in London in the morning, Rayshon Jenkins, 102-yard scoop and score, and then go ahead and throw in not 1, but 2 blocked field goals returned for touchdowns, because the Niners did it, as well as the New York Giants. We'll get to the Giants in a minute, but let's go back to Patrick Surtain, because I want to focus on him. We know he's an amazing cornerback. I'm pretty sure Patrick Surtain II just made his bid as an early favorite for Defensive Player of the Year. An incredible day in Denver for the young corner. Doesn't just have the pick 6, also has another interception, finishes his day with 3 tackles, 2 pass breakups, 2 interceptions, one of those going for a touchdown. Not just any touchdown either, a touchdown that completely swung this 34-18 win against the Raiders. At that time in the game, Gardner Minshew's driving the Raiders to potentially take a 17-3 lead. Vegas had been moving the ball well to that point in the game. Brock Bowers, 57-yard touchdown early in the game. Surtain's pick took the game, turned it on its head. Potentially a 17-3 deficit turns into a 10-10 tie, and the Broncos would go from there. Kevin Kugler and Moose Johnston were on the call in Denver. Had a chance to catch up with them about the impact that Patrick Surtain made on this game. Well, guys, I think we all knew he was good, but it feels pretty rare and pretty incredible to see a corner like Patrick Surtain influence a game the way that he did in this one against Las Vegas.
Not only did he influence the game, Daryl, he completely turned this game around. Now, 100-yard pick six is a big play. It's never happened before in Denver history until today. But that turned this entire game around.
Yeah, we talked about during the course of the game, momentum sometimes is a tangible thing, and it was today. I mean, it flipped from the Raiders having it to Denver stealing it, and then they never gave it back. And it was such a pivotal point in the game. And at that point, the Raiders had really controlled it. Time of possession, total yards. They were doing everything, kind of following up a big victory last week and really confusing and confounding the Broncos. And that one play flipped everything in a matter of seconds, and they were never able to recover.
Obviously, Broncos are now winners of 3 straight, and a couple of these wins following familiar patterns. Does this feel like a pretty sustainable method for a rookie-led team like the Broncos to get wins in the NFL?
Well, the old saying is defense is portable. And that defense is going to go everywhere the Broncos go this year. And as long as you have that kind of defensive play, I think you can make some life very difficult on teams across this league.
I don't think it's sustainable right now. They've got to have some other people step up. And I think it goes back to the conversation we had with Sean Payton, where he talked about not just a playmaker on the outside to help Bo Nix, but a left tackle who keeps that play secure on his blind side. A good running back. He used the word joker tight end and joker running back, going back to Travis Kelce or Alvin Kamara, those types of guys. It doesn't have to be just the receiver on the outside. And then to Kevin's point, a defense that travels. And this is definitely a team that is driven by its defense right now. The offense just has to catch up. If they can start to show signs of progress, I'll start to say that, yeah, this potentially could be sustainable for the year. But I thought today that Bo Nix and the offense were going to play a lot better than they did. They played well at times. They just need some consistency with the way that they're doing things offensively.
I think that's a really fair assessment. I mean, a nice day overall, but man, this Denver defense, you can't say enough about the way they sparked this thing. Really impressive afternoon for them. Guys, thanks for the time.
Always good to be on with you. Thanks.
I've said on this show before that it's hard for DBs to win awards like Defensive Player of the Year because you need the stats. You got to get picks. And if teams won't throw at you, it's hard to do. Case in point, Patrick Surtain's been phenomenal all season long. You can go look at his list of victims, shutting down fantastic receivers like DK Metcalf and Garrett Wilson as the season has gone along. But you got to get the picks. Well, he got his first ones of the season this week, 2 of them, in fact. One of them, obviously, the touchdown that turns this game around for Denver. Big part of the reason why they are now above 500. You get the picks to go with the coverage ability. It's Denver defense going to keep getting results. A lot of ball game left, but Patrick Surtain belongs on the short list of Defensive Player of the Year candidates. You heard it here. Can't wait to see how he follows this up for that young Denver defense. One last shout out, because it was a crazy day. This is the first 6 touchdowns on defense and special teams. It's the most this season so far. And it's the most since week 4 of last season. So rare to see it happen this many times in 1 week. I just got to give a shout out to the New York Giants as well, because it looked like they might let a win slip away. They had been leading in the second half against Seattle all afternoon. Geno Smith under duress from the Giants pass rush, but Seattle does enough to line up for a game-tying field goal with less than a minute to play. And if this game goes to overtime, Geno Smith leading the league in passing yards, all those weapons on offense, even with their struggles, I'm going to take them in overtime to get the dub. That's why the Giants just didn't let it get that far. Looks like we're headed for OT. Game-tying field goal on the way when Isaiah Simmons does his best Cam Chancellor impression. Shout out to Bill Barnwell for pointing that out. Cam Chancellor style leaps the line of scrimmage at the snap, swats down the field goal. Backup wide receiver Bryce Ford Wheaton picks it up 60 yards for a touchdown. Giants go up 2 scores with under a minute to play, and they secure the win to keep their season afloat. Incredible way to cap off a game that looked like it might be slipping away. Giants, 6.5-point underdogs in this game. So you got the Giants with a big win that they weren't expected to get. The Cardinals, obviously, 7.5-point underdogs against San Francisco. Big day for the road underdog winning outright. Can't think of a better way to do it than with a Cam Chancellor impression in Seattle. Really fun way to wrap up Sunday. A long Sunday, a very busy, fun Sunday, and we're not done yet. There's one more game left in week 5. Kansas City playing host to New Orleans Saints on Monday night. We will be back to wrap all of that up, to take you through what was good, what was bad. How does Patrick Mahomes perform without Rashee Rice this week? We will see. We're also going to get into some of the biggest surprises from the first 5 weeks of the season. Looking forward to another loaded show. We'll be back in your feed on Tuesday. Make sure you're subscribed. Go find us on Spotify, on Apple Podcast. Give us a follow on any of the socials at NFL on Fox Pod. We appreciate it so much. I will talk to y'all next time. As always, I appreciate it.